Commander Kalen Voss stared at the navigation display, his weathered fingers tracing the empty coordinates where Earth should have been. The stellar cartographer's voice had cracked when she delivered the report 3 hours ago, and now the entire bridge of the Retribution's edge remained silent, save for the gentle hum of life support systems that seemed suddenly too loud in the vacuum of disbelief. "Run the scan again, Zephyr," Kalen said, his voice barely above a whisper. His chief strategist, Zephyr Thorne, had already performed the deep space scan 7 times, but Hope, that most human of traits, refused to die easily. Zephyr's pale hands danced across the quantum sensors, her silver hair catching the blue glow of the displays. She had lost her entire family on Earth, just like everyone else aboard the ship. They had been returning from the Kepler colony when they discovered that home no longer existed, not destroyed, not relocated, but simply erased from every map, every database, every record in the known galaxy. "The readings are consistent, Commander," Zephyr replied, her voice hollow. "Sol system coordinates show nothing but empty space. No debris field, no gravitational echoes, no trace radiation. It's as if Earth, as if our entire solar system never existed." The bridge crew exchanged glances heavy with grief and confusion. 23 billion humans had lived on Earth and throughout the Sol system. Now, according to every official record in the Galactic Consortium, they had never been there at all. The few thousand humans scattered across distant colonies were all that remained, orphans in a universe that had collectively chosen to forget their birthright. Kalen's jaw tightened as he recalled the meeting with the consortium's regional administrator, a pompous Zelthari with iridescent scales and cold, reptilian eyes. The creature had looked at their human delegation with something approaching amusement when they demanded answers about Earth's disappearance. "Earth," the administrator had said, consulting his datapad with theatrical confusion. "I'm afraid there's no record of any planet by that name in our databases. Perhaps you're mistaken about your origins? Many primitive species have false origin myths." The insult had been calculated, deliberate. Humanity had been a rising power in the consortium, their technological innovations and diplomatic efforts earning them respect and influence. Earth had been on the verge of becoming a core world, with all the privileges and protections that status entailed. Someone, or some alliance of someones, had decided that humanity's ascension posed too great a threat. "Sir," called navigator Naya Corvin from her station, her dark eyes fixed on the long-range sensors. "I'm detecting a hegemony patrol fleet, bearing 27 Mark IV. They're moving to intercept." Kalen's blood chilled. The hegemony was the consortium's enforcement arm, composed primarily of the warrior caste Thrakari and their client species. If they were here, it meant someone wanted the remaining humans silenced permanently. "How many ships?" Kalen asked, already moving toward the tactical station. 12 capital ships, plus escorts, Naya reported, her fingers flying across her controls. "They'll be in weapons range within 6 hours. Zephyr looked up from her station, her face pale but determined. "Commander, I've been analyzing the pattern of our colony attacks over the past month. It's not random. Someone is systematically hunting down every human settlement in the Outer Rim." The pieces fell into place with horrifying clarity. Earth's erasure wasn't just about removing humanity's homeworld, it was about erasing humanity itself. The colonies were being eliminated one by one, their populations relocated to destinations unknown. Within a year, maybe 2, there would be no record that humans had ever existed at all. "They want us extinct," Kalen said quietly, the words carrying across the bridge like a death sentence. "Complete genocide, hidden behind bureaucratic efficiency." "What are your orders, sir?" asked Lieutenant Commander Thane Blackwood, the ship's weapons officer. His hand hovered over the tactical controls, though they all knew that one ship, even a heavy cruiser like the Retribution's Edge, stood little chance against a full hegemony fleet. Kalen looked around the bridge at his crew, his family, really, since family was all any of them had left. They were engineers and explorers, diplomats and scientists who had believed in humanity's place among the stars. Now they were the last witnesses to a crime that no one would acknowledge had ever occurred. "Set course for the Kepler colony," he said finally. "Best possible speed." "Sir, that will take us directly through the hegemony patrol pattern," Naya warned. "I know." Kalen's voice carried a new tone, harder than the vacuum of space itself. "If they want to erase us from history, they'll have to work for it. And maybe," he paused, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so welcoming, "maybe it's time the galaxy learned what happens when you try to erase humanity." The Retribution's edge turned away from the empty coordinates where Earth had once spun in peaceful orbit, its engines building to full burn. Behind them, the hegemony fleet adjusted course to follow, unaware that they were pursuing not refugees, but the first spark of a fire that would consume the very foundations of the galaxy they thought they controlled. In the depths of space, war was being born. The Kepler colony hung like a wounded bird against the backdrop of its dying star, atmosphere processors working overtime to maintain the thin shell of breathable air around the settlement domes. Commander Kalen Voss materialized in the colony's central plaza, the transport beam still sparkling around him as emergency lights bathed everything in red. The evacuation was already underway. Colony Director Sage Morwen met him at the transport pad, her weather-beaten face etched with lines of exhaustion and fear. She had shepherded 12,000 souls through 3 alien invasions and 2 corporate wars, but nothing had prepared her for this systematic erasure of her species. "They hit the Centauri settlements first," she reported without preamble, falling into step beside Kalen as they hurried toward the command center. "Arcturus Prime, then the mining stations in the Vega system. Always the same pattern, hegemony, inspections, followed by mass relocations. No one ever returns from these transports." "How many colonies remain?" Kalen asked, watching families stream past them carrying whatever belongings they could manage. Children clutched toy starships and digital tablets displaying images of Earth, a home they would never see because it no longer existed. 17 confirmed, maybe 3 more in the Rim territories, Sage replied. "We estimate 40,000 humans left alive in total, scattered across half the galaxy." The numbers hit Kalen like physical blows. 23 billion reduced to 40,000. An entire civilization compressed into population that wouldn't fill a medium-sized city. In the command center, Zephyr Thorne stood surrounded by holographic displays showing fleet positions throughout human space. Her strategic mind had been working constantly during their journey to Kepler, and the pattern she had uncovered was both elegant and terrifying. "They're using a spiral containment pattern," she explained as Kalen approached. "Working from the outer rim inward, systematically isolating and eliminating each settlement. Mathematical precision, no survivors to spread word, no evidence left behind." "How long do we have?" Kalen asked. "At current pace? 6 months before the last human colony falls." Zephyr's fingers traced the projected routes on the display. "But there's something else. I've been analyzing the consortium trade records, cross-referencing with military deployments. This isn't just the hegemony acting alone." The hologram shifted, revealing supply chains and communication networks spanning dozens of species and hundreds of worlds. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Entire sectors of the galaxy had coordinated to ensure humanity's extinction. "The Zelthari provided the administrative framework," Zephyr continued. "The Thrakari supplied military force. The Crystalline Collective offered their reality-shaping technology to erase Earth itself. Even the peaceful Verdani contributed bioweapons to ensure no human could find sanctuary on their worlds." Director Morwen slumped into a chair, the weight of betrayal evident in every line of her body. "The Verdani? We helped them develop their atmospheric processors. We shared our medical technologies freely. Fear makes monsters of us all," said a new voice from the doorway. Captain Naya Corvin entered, still wearing her flight suit from the reconnaissance mission she had just completed. Her report would change everything. "The consortium isn't just eliminating us," Naya announced. "They're redistributing our territories, our resources, our innovations among themselves. I intercepted communications between the Zelthari Regional Administrator and the Hegemony High Command. They're calling it the human dividend. Kalen felt something cold and terrible crystallizing in his chest. They're profiting from our extinction. More than that, Naya continued. They're treating our annihilation like a business merger. Clean, efficient, profitable. No messy wars, no refugee crises, no awkward diplomatic incidents. Just, gone. The room fell silent except for the distant sounds of evacuation procedures. Families were being loaded onto transport ships, heading for temporary refuges that might buy them weeks or months before the inevitable discovery and relocation. The systematic nature of their extinction made resistance seem futile. How do you fight an enemy that can simply erase you from existence? There is another option, Zephyr said quietly, her voice cutting through the despair like a blade. We don't have to run anymore. All eyes turned to her as she manipulated the holographic display, showing the network of consortium worlds, trade routes, and military installations. Her pale fingers moved with surgical precision, highlighting key systems and strategic choke points. They want to erase us? Fine. Let's see how they feel when we start erasing them. Her voice carried a coldness that would have been alien to her 6 months ago, before Earth disappeared. We have advantages they don't expect. We're already ghosts in their systems, no official records, no tracked movements, no predictable patterns. Kalen studied the display, seeing the elegant death hiding in Zephyr's calculations. You're talking about total war. I'm talking about total extinction, she corrected. There's every species that participated in our elimination, every world that profited from our annihilation, every ship that carried out their relocations. We make them understand that humanity is not a line item to be erased from a ledger. Director Morwin looked horrified. That's genocide. We'd be no better than them. No, Kalen said, his voice carrying the weight of 23 billion murdered souls. We'd be far, far worse. And they would deserve every moment of it. The transport ships continued loading in the distance, carrying the last free humans toward an uncertain future. But in the command center of Kepler Colony, something new was being born, not hope, not desperation, but something infinitely more dangerous. The galaxy had taught humanity that mercy was weakness, that compassion was vulnerability, that trust was fatal. The lesson had been learned with terrible completeness. Now it was time for humanity to teach. The hidden asteroid base in the Shadow Rift Nebula hummed with desperate activity as humanity's last fleet took shape. Commander Kalen Voss walked through the converted mining tunnels, watching engineers work around the clock to retrofit civilian vessels into instruments of war. The transformation of his species from explorers to exterminators weighed heavily on his soul, but the alternative was extinction. Final count, sir, reported Chief Engineer Dex Ravencrest, his cybernetic arm gleaming under the harsh work lights. He had lost his organic limb during the evacuation of New Geneva, another colony erased from existence. 47 ships of varying classes. 15,000 personnel, including civilians. 15,000. The number echoed in Kalen's mind as he reviewed the fleet roster. It represented nearly half of humanity's remaining population, all gathered in this forgotten corner of space to attempt the impossible, the complete annihilation of a galactic empire. In the command center, Zephyr Thorne had transformed into something barely recognizable as the diplomatic strategist she had once been. Her hair had turned completely white during the months of planning, and her eyes held a coldness that seemed to reflect the void between stars. Surrounding her were holographic displays showing every consortium world, every trade route, every military installation that had participated in humanity's erasure. The beauty of systematic genocide, she explained to the assembled command staff, is that it requires systematic infrastructure. They've built an entire network designed to eliminate species efficiently and without trace. We're going to turn that network into their tomb. Tactical specialist Vex Stormwind, formerly a xenobiology professor at Earth University, highlighted key systems on the display. Phase 1 targets the crystalline collective. Their reality-shaping technology is what allowed them to erase Earth so completely. Without them, the consortium loses its ability to hide the evidence. Phase 2 eliminates the Zelthari administrative nodes, continued intelligence Chief Lyra Nightfall, her voice carrying the flat tone of someone who had seen too much death. Cut off their coordination capabilities and the entire conspiracy begins to unravel. Phase 3, said Fleet Commander Orion Darkthorn, the youngest person in the room at barely 30 years old, targets the hegemony military infrastructure. Once their force projection capability is eliminated, the remaining species will be isolated and vulnerable. Kalen nodded, studying the strategic framework that would require humanity to become something monstrous. Time frame? 18 months for complete implementation, Zephyr replied. But the galaxy will understand what's happening long before then. After the first few systems fall, every species in the consortium will know that humanity has returned. And they'll unite against us, warned Director Sage Morwen, who had insisted on joining the fleet despite being offered sanctuary on one of the hidden refugee worlds. The moment they realize what we're capable of, they'll put aside their differences and focus on eliminating the threat. Good, Kalen said simply. Let them come together. Let them share the same terror they inflicted on us. Through the viewports of the command center, the last ships of humanity's fleet prepared for departure. The Retribution's edge had been joined by vessels with names that spoke to their crew's state of mind: Final Testament, Orphan's Vengeance, Remember Earth, No Forgiveness. Each ship carried the collective grief and rage of a species that had been marked for extinction. Sir, called Communications Officer Echo Void Caller from her station. We're receiving a priority transmission from the refugee convoy at Tau Ceti. It's Governor Chen from the new Shanghai settlement. The main display flickered to life, showing the dignified face of Governor Lei Chen, a woman who had governed one of humanity's most prosperous colonies. Her expression carried a weight that spoke of terrible news. Commander Voss, she began, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. The hegemony found us. They came with 40 ships and complete orbital superiority. We couldn't run. They wouldn't let us surrender. The display showed scenes of orbital bombardment, of cities burning beneath alien weapons, of transports carrying civilians into the void. 12,000 people, gone. They left one message probe, Governor Chen continued. For humanity to find. The message was simple: surrender the remaining populations for relocation, or watch them burn world by world. You have 7 days to comply. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in absolute silence. 38,000 humans left alive in the galaxy, and the consortium was demanding their surrender for processing. The ultimatum was clear: submit to extinction or watch it happen anyway. Kalen looked around the room at his commanders, at the people who had become his family in humanity's darkest hour. He saw his own resolve reflected in their faces, the same terrible determination that had driven them to this forgotten asteroid base. Communications, he said quietly. Open a channel to all ships. Echo's fingers moved across her controls, and the faces of 47 ship commanders appeared on the display grid. They were merchants and miners, scientists and settlers, people who had never intended to become humanity's last guardians. Now they waited for orders that would either save their species or damn them completely. 7 days, Kalen said, his voice carrying to every corner of the fleet. They've given us 7 days to surrender our families, our children, our future. 7 days to accept extinction quietly and efficiently. He paused, looking at each face on the display. I have a counter-proposal for the consortium, he continued. They have 7 days to surrender their fleets, their worlds, and their civilizations. After that, we start erasing them from the galaxy the same way they erased us, completely, efficiently, and without mercy. The fleet commanders began to smile, and those smiles were the most terrifying things Kalen had ever seen. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump, he ordered. Target, Crystalline Collective Home System. It's time to begin teaching the galaxy what happens when you try to erase humanity. The last fleet of mankind jumped into hyperspace, carrying with them the end of the Age of Mercy. The crystalline collective's home system of prismatic glory had been considered one of the galaxy's most beautiful wonders, 7 worlds of living crystal that sang in harmonious resonance across interstellar space. The crystalline beings themselves were energy creatures of pure thought, capable of reshaping reality through collective consciousness. They had been humanity's teachers in the early days of galactic contact, sharing wisdom about the fundamental nature of the universe. Now their singing would stop forever. Commander Kalen Voss stood on the bridge of the Retribution's edge as humanity's fleet emerged from hyperspace at the system's edge. The crystalline worlds gleamed like jewels against the backdrop of their blue-white star, their surfaces pulsing with the rhythmic patterns of a billion interconnected minds. Fleet deployment complete, reported Fleet Commander Orion Darkthorn. All ships in position around the system perimeter. Zephyr Thorn worked at the tactical station, her pale fingers dancing across controls that would coordinate the first act of humanity's revenge. Quantum disruption mines are active. No ship enters or leaves this system without our permission. Incoming transmission from the collective, announced Communications Officer Echo Void Caller. They're requesting identification and stating our purpose for entering their space. The main display activated, showing the shimmering, barely humanoid form of a crystalline collective speaker. The being's voice resonated with harmonics that had once seemed beautiful to human ears. Unknown vessels, you have entered collective space without authorization. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. We offer peaceful welcome to all sentient beings who come in friendship. Kalen stepped forward, his face hard as the vacuum of space. This is Commander Kalen Voss of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. We come seeking justice for genocide. The speaker's form flickered with confusion. We do not understand. There are no records of any species called human in our databases. Perhaps you are mistaken about your designation? You erased those records, Kalen replied, his voice carrying across the bridge to every ship in the fleet. Just as you helped erase our homeworld from existence. You used your reality-shaping abilities to remove Earth from the galaxy, to make it as if 23 billion people never existed. This is impossible, the speaker protested. The collective does not engage in acts of destruction. We are beings of harmony and peaceful coexistence. Zephyr looked up from her console, her white hair catching the bridge lights. The quantum signatures match perfectly. Their technology was used to phase-shift Earth and the entire Sol system into dimensional exile. They didn't destroy our world, they made it so it never existed in this reality. Kalen nodded, then addressed the speaker again. Where are they? Where did you send 23 billion innocent people? We. The speaker's form began to destabilize as it attempted to access forbidden memories. There are gaps in our collective consciousness. Sealed chambers of memory that the Council forbade us to examine. Open them. We cannot. The seals were placed by unanimous consent of all 7 worlds. To break them would require extreme duress, Zephyr interrupted. Commander, I'm reading massive energy buildups across all 7 crystalline worlds. They're preparing to use their reality-shaping abilities defensively. Through the viewports, the crystalline worlds began to pulse more rapidly, their surfaces shifting from peaceful blue to aggressive red. Space itself seemed to shimmer around them as the collective prepared to phase the human fleet out of existence just as they had done to Earth. All ships, Kalen ordered, his voice carrying the weight of absolute finality. Execute Shatter Protocol. The human fleet opened fire as one, but these were not ordinary weapons. During the months of preparation, humanity's greatest scientists had developed something new, quantum disruptor torpedoes designed specifically to destroy crystalline structures at the subatomic level. Each torpedo carried the concentrated hatred of a species facing extinction. The first world died within minutes, its crystalline surface cracking and crumbling as the disruptor waves tore apart the quantum bonds that held it together. The harmonic singing that had echoed across space for millions of years became a scream of agony as a billion minds felt their physical matrix dissolving. "They're trying to phase shift," reported scanner technician Nova Shadowmere. "But the disruptor field is preventing dimensional manipulation." The second world began to crack, its surface splitting into massive chasms that revealed the molten core beneath. The collective speaker reappeared on the display, its form now unstable and desperate. "Stop. Please. We will open the sealed memories. We will tell you everything." "Too late," Kalen said quietly. "You had your chance for mercy when you chose to erase 23 billion innocent people. Now you get to experience extinction firsthand." The third world shattered completely, its fragments spreading across space in a cloud of crystalline debris. With each destroyed world, the collective's ability to maintain cohesive thought diminished. Their reality-shaping powers flickered and failed as the quantum foundations of their existence crumbled. "Commander," Zephyr called from her station. "I'm detecting massive data dumps from the remaining worlds. They're trying to transmit their core memories before they die. Are we receiving them?" "Yes, sir. The information is, my God, Kalen. They didn't just erase Earth. They've done this before. To dozens of species across galactic history." The fourth world died as Kalen absorbed this revelation. The crystalline collective hadn't been reluctant participants in humanity's genocide, they had been the architects of similar erasures throughout the galaxy's past. Species that had become too powerful, too independent, too threatening to the established order had simply been removed from existence, their entire histories rewritten. "How many?" Kalen asked. "At least 40 confirmed erasures over the past million years," Zephyr replied, her voice hollow. "Entire civilizations removed from reality because they posed theoretical threats to consortium stability. The fifth and sixth worlds cracked and died as humanity's weapons continued their methodical destruction. Only the capital world of the collective remained, its surface now pulsing with chaotic patterns as the surviving minds tried desperately to maintain coherent thought. "Final transmission coming through," Echo announced. They're trying to bargain." The speaker appeared one last time, its form barely holding together. "The humans, your people, they still exist. Earth was not destroyed but displaced. We can bring them back. Please, have mercy." Kalen stared at the dying creature, feeling something cold and final settle in his chest. "Where are they?" "Dimensional pocket, collapsed space, still alive but separated from our reality. We can restore them." For a moment, hope flared in Kalen's heart. Earth still existed, somewhere in folded space. His family, his home, 23 billion people still lived. All he had to do was spare this last world, show mercy to the creatures responsible for humanity's exile. Then he thought of New Shanghai burning. Of the colonies eliminated while humanity searched desperately for home. Of 40,000 survivors scattered across the galaxy, facing systematic extermination. "No," he said finally. "You taught the galaxy that mercy is weakness. That forgiveness is vulnerability. That trust is fatal. Thank you for the lesson." The seventh world died under humanity's guns, its crystalline structure disintegrating into quantum foam. The harmonic singing that had echoed across space for eons fell silent forever. An entire species, a civilization of pure thought and energy, had been erased from existence. In the aftermath, as the fleet surveyed the debris field that had once been 7 beautiful worlds, Zephyr approached Kalen's command chair. "Sir," she said quietly. "Without the collective's reality-shaping abilities, we may never be able to bring Earth back. They were the only ones who knew the dimensional coordinates." Kalen nodded, staring out at the crystalline fragments drifting through space. "I know. But they made their choice when they helped erase us. Now they can share our fate." The fleet regrouped and prepared for the next jump. Phase 1 was complete. 6 phases remained, and 37 more species to eliminate. The galaxy would learn that humanity's capacity for vengeance was infinite. Even if it meant sacrificing their own souls in the process, the Zelthari homeworld of Velthara Prime sparkled like a massive emerald against the dark of space, its surface covered in gleaming administrative towers that reached toward the sky like crystalline fingers. This was the bureaucratic heart of the consortium, where countless species' fates were decided by beings who viewed genocide as a simple matter of proper paperwork. Commander Kalen Voss studied the planet through the viewports of the Retribution's edge, watching the orbital platforms that processed information for half the galaxy. Somewhere in those towers were the records that had erased humanity from existence, forms signed, stamps applied, files deleted with the same casual efficiency used to process trade permits. Orbital defenses are minimal, reported Fleet Commander Orion Darkthorn. The Zelthari have always relied on diplomacy and bureaucracy rather than military force. They never expected anyone to hold them accountable for their administrative decisions. Intelligence Chief Lyra Nightfall highlighted key targets on the tactical display. Primary government centers, data storage facilities, communications networks. If we eliminate their ability to coordinate, the entire consortium command structure will collapse into chaos. Population centers, asked Director Sage Morwin, her voice carrying the weight of moral concern that still haunted some of humanity's leaders. 4 billion Zelthari across the planet, Lyra replied coldly. Plus another billion off-world administrative personnel throughout consortium space. The numbers hung in the air like an accusation. 4 billion lives, more than 5 times the population of Earth before its erasure. For a moment, Kalen felt the ghost of his former self, the diplomat who had believed in peaceful coexistence and the inherent goodness of sentient beings. Then he remembered the regional administrator's amused expression when denying Earth's existence. The casual dismissal of 23 billion murdered souls as a filing error. The systematic efficiency with which they had processed humanity's extinction. All administrative personnel are complicit, he said finally. They signed the orders, processed the paperwork, coordinated the erasures. Every Zelthari bureaucrat who contributed to our genocide bears responsibility for what happens next. Incoming transmission from Velthara Prime, announced Communications Officer Echo Voidcaller. They're requesting identification and diplomatic credentials. The main display activated, showing the familiar reptilian features of a Zelthari official. Its iridescent scales caught the office lighting as it consulted a datapad with practiced efficiency. Unknown fleet, you have entered consortium administrative space without proper authorization. Please transmit your diplomatic credentials and state your business with the Zelthari Administrative Council. Kalen stepped forward, his face a mask of controlled rage. This is Commander Kalen Voss representing the human species. We're here to discuss our recent administrative erasure from Galactic records. The Zelthari official's expression shifted to one of polite confusion. I'm afraid there's no record of any species called human in our databases. Perhaps you're referring to a client species under a different designation? We're referring to the species you erased from existence 6 months ago, Kalen replied. 23 billion people removed from history through what you classified as administrative reorganization. Sir, I can assure you that no such reorganization has taken place. All administrative actions are properly documented and reviewed according to consortium protocols. If you believe there has been an error, I can direct you to the appropriate complaint filing procedures. I have a better idea, Kalen interrupted. Why don't I show you what happens when someone files a complaint against the Zelthari Administrative Council? The human fleet opened fire without further warning. Quantum torpedoes streaked toward the orbital platforms while assault squadrons targeted the government towers on the planet's surface. But this was not the clinical destruction that had ended the crystalline collective, this was personal. The first orbital platform exploded in a cascade of sparks and debris, its data cores containing the administrative records of 1,000 worlds scattering into the void. On the surface, precision strikes destroyed bureaucratic centers with surgical accuracy, eliminating the beings responsible for processing genocide with the same efficiency they had used to commit it. They're trying to transmit emergency protocols to other consortium worlds, reported scanner technician Nova Shadowmere. Jamming them now. Through the bridge speakers came the panicked transmissions of Zelthari administrators as they realized their orbital platforms were being systematically destroyed. Their voices carried the same tone of bewildered outrage that humanity had felt upon discovering Earth's erasure. "This is unconscionable," came one transmission. "We are administrative personnel. We process paperwork. This is a violation of every diplomatic protocol in the galaxy." Zephyr Thorn looked up from her tactical station, her white hair stark against her pale skin. "They still don't understand. They think their bureaucratic immunity protects them from consequences." "Let's educate them," Kalen said grimly. The assault squadrons moved to Phase 2 of the operation, targeted elimination of administrative personnel. Elite human soldiers, trained in the months since Earth's disappearance, stormed the government towers with weapons designed to cause maximum psychological impact. They wanted the Zelthari to understand that this was not random violence but calculated justice. "Transmission coming through from the planetary surface," Echo announced. "It's the Zelthari Prime Administrator." The display showed an elderly Zelthari in ornate robes, its scales dull with age and fear. Behind it, smoke rose from burning towers as human forces methodically dismantled the bureaucratic heart of the galaxy. "Please," the Prime Administrator pleaded. "Whatever dispute you believe exists, it can be resolved through proper channels. We have mediation protocols, appeals processes, diplomatic immunity. Like the diplomatic immunity Earth enjoyed as a consortium member world?" Kalen asked. "The same immunity that protected 23 billion civilians from administrative genocide?" There must be some mistake. No such action was authorized at the prime administrative level. Perhaps a regional error, a miscommunication. Zephyr activated her console, transmitting the recovered data from the crystalline collective directly to the Zelthari Prime Administrator. "These are your authorization codes. Your personal signature on the erasure orders. Your species coordinated the elimination of 43 civilizations over the past million years." The Prime Administrator's scales flushed pale as it accessed the transmitted data. "These records are classified at the highest levels." "How did you? The collective would never." "The collective no longer exists," Kalen said simply. 7 worlds of crystalline beings, gone. Their entire species erased just as efficiently as they helped erase ours. And now it's your turn. The orbital bombardment intensified, targeting the massive data centers that stored administrative records for thousands of worlds. Each explosion represented centuries of bureaucratic history going up in flames, trade agreements, territorial boundaries, citizenship records, all reduced to quantum fire. "You're destroying the foundation of galactic civilization," the Prime Administrator screamed. "Without administrative oversight, the galaxy will descend into chaos." "Good," Kalen replied. "Let every species that participated in our genocide experience the same chaos they inflicted on us. Let them watch their carefully ordered universe burn." As the assault continued, reports began coming in from throughout consortium space. Without the Zelthari administrative network, communication between member worlds was breaking down. Trade agreements were being violated as planets lost access to their records. Border disputes erupted as territorial databases went offline. "Sir," called Intelligence Chief Lyra Nightfall. "We're receiving surrender offers from 12 consortium worlds. They're willing to submit to human authority if we spare their administrative centers." "Too late," Kalen said, watching another government tower collapse in flames. "They had their chance to submit when they were committing genocide. Now they get to experience the chaos they created." The last orbital platform died in a burst of flame and metal, its destruction marking the end of Zelthari administrative power. On the surface, human forces had captured or eliminated every major bureaucratic center, leaving the planet's government in complete collapse. As the fleet prepared to depart, Director Sage Morwen approached Kalen's command chair. "4 billion people," she said quietly. We just murdered an entire civilization. No, Kalen corrected, his voice cold as space itself. We administered justice according to proper consortium protocols. All actions have been documented and filed appropriately. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind a world in flames and a galaxy beginning to understand that humanity's vengeance would be thorough, efficient, and absolutely without mercy. 5 species extinct. 32 to go. The hegemony stronghold of Thracarian Major hung in space like a fortress of black metal and violent intent, its massive orbital shipyards churning out instruments of war with mechanical precision. This was the beating heart of consortium military might, home to the warrior caste Thraccari who had carried out the actual extermination of human colonies with methodical brutality. Commander Kalen Voss stood before the holographic display showing the heavily fortified system, watching automated defense platforms patrol between construction yards where new dreadnoughts took shape. The Thraccari had built their empire on the principle that might made right, that superior firepower justified any action. Today, humanity would test that philosophy to its limits. Defensive network is extensive, reported Fleet Commander Orion Darkthorn, his young face marked by the controlled fury that had become humanity's defining characteristic. 400 autonomous weapon platforms, 16 battle stations, plus the home fleet, over 200 capital ships. Strategic Coordinator Zephyr Thorne manipulated the tactical display, her white hair gleaming under the bridge lights. They've had 6 hours to prepare since we eliminated the Zelthari administrative network. Every ship in the hegemony is converging on this system. How many? Kalen asked. 3,000 combat vessels, Zephyr replied, her voice carrying no emotion. The largest military fleet in galactic history, assembled specifically to end humanity's campaign of vengeance. Intelligence Chief Lyra Nightfall highlighted enemy formations on the display. They're not just defending, they're planning to trap us here. Complete annihilation of human forces in a single decisive battle. The numbers should have been overwhelming. Humanity's 47 ships against 3,000 hegemony vessels, with the most heavily fortified system in the galaxy as their battleground. By every tactical analysis, the human fleet was sailing toward certain destruction. Sir, called Communications Officer Echo Void Caller. We're receiving a transmission from the Hegemony High Command. They're demanding our immediate surrender. The main display activated, showing the imposing figure of a Thraccari war commander. Its 4 arms ended in cybernetic claws, and its reptilian face bore the ritual scars of 100 battles. When it spoke, its voice carried the confidence of a predator addressing prey. Human interlopers, I am War Commander Vex Slaughterclaw of the Hegemony 10th Fleet. Your pathetic terrorist campaign ends here. Surrender immediately and we will grant you quick deaths rather than the slow torment your species deserves. Kalen stepped forward, studying the alien warrior who embodied everything he had learned to hate about the galaxy's power structure. This is Commander Kalen Voss. I'm here to discuss the hegemony's role in processing 43 species for extinction, including my own. The strong consume the weak, Slaughterclaw replied with casual brutality. Your species was marked for elimination because you threatened the natural order. The hegemony merely carried out necessary culling operations. Necessary culling operations, Kalen repeated, tasting the clinical phrase. Is that what you called burning 12,000 civilians alive at New Shanghai? Efficient resource management, the war commander said, its scarred face showing no remorse. Your colonies were given opportunities to submit for peaceful processing. When they resisted, force became necessary. Through the bridge windows, the vast hegemony fleet began moving into attack formation. Massive dreadnoughts flanked by swarms of fighters created a wall of firepower that stretched across space. Any conventional fleet would have been vaporized within minutes of entering this system. But humanity had long since abandoned conventional thinking. All ships, Kalen ordered, his voice carrying across the fleet channels. Execute Nova Protocol. The human vessels scattered, each ship following pre-programmed vectors that seemed random but had been calculated with mathematical precision. As they moved, their hulls began to shimmer with energy patterns that defied conventional physics. "What are they doing?" Slaughterclaw demanded, its confidence faltering as the human ship seemed to phase in and out of normal space. Zephyr smiled for the first time in months, and it was a terrible expression. "We learned something from studying the crystalline collective's technology before we exterminated them. Reality is more flexible than most species realize." The first human ship simply vanished, reappearing inside the defensive perimeter in a burst of twisted spacetime. Then another, and another, until all 47 vessels had bypassed the carefully constructed defensive network through controlled dimensional manipulation. "Impossible!" Slaughterclaw roared. "No species has ever mastered collective phasing technology. No species has ever had sufficient motivation," Kalen replied coldly. The human fleet materialized throughout the Thracarian system, each ship targeting critical infrastructure with weapons that violated the known laws of physics. Quantum disruptor torpedoes tore apart the orbital shipyards while phase displacement bombs eliminated entire battle stations by simply moving them out of normal space. But the true horror began when humanity demonstrated what they had learned from studying 43 extinct civilizations. Each eliminated species had possessed unique technologies, special weapons, defensive capabilities that had made them threats to consortium stability. Humanity had recovered and reverse-engineered every single innovation. "Biosynthetic plague from the Verdani Collective," Zephyr announced as green clouds began spreading through hegemony vessels. "Molecular disintegrators from the Keth Empire. Temporal distortion fields from the Chronos Syndicate." Ship after ship in the hegemony fleet began experiencing impossible failures. Hulls rotted away from biotechnology designed by peaceful farmers. Electronics dissolved under weapons created by extinct philosophers. Time itself became unreliable as causality loops trapped entire squadrons in recursive destruction. "You're using their own victims' technologies against them," Director Sage Morwen observed, her voice carrying equal parts awe and horror. "Every species they erased left behind gifts," Kalen confirmed. "Technologies preserved in consortium archives, dismissed as threats to stability. We're simply returning them to active use." The hegemony fleet, despite its overwhelming numerical superiority, began to disintegrate under the combined assault of 43 extinct civilizations' final weapons. War Commander Slaughterclaw's flagship erupted in temporal fire as its past and future collapsed into a single moment of destruction. All hegemony forces, fall back to secondary positions, came panic transmissions as the mighty war machine began to break apart. "They're not human anymore. They're something else." But there was nowhere to retreat. Human ships phased through defensive lines, appeared behind fleeing vessels, materialized inside capital ship hulls to detonate reality distortion bombs. The systematic precision that had once characterized hegemony military operations now worked against them as humanity exploited every tactical doctrine they had ever developed. Within 6 hours, 3,000 warships had been reduced to drifting wreckage and expanding clouds of debris. The orbital shipyards that had produced instruments of oppression for 1,000 worlds burned with fires that existed outside normal time. The hegemony's home system had become a graveyard. "Final transmission from the surface," Echo announced. "It's the planetary war marshal." The display showed a battered Thracari commander surrounded by the ruins of what had once been an impregnable fortress. Its 4 arms hung limp with defeat as it stared at the human fleet with something approaching understanding. "What are you?" it asked simply. Kalen studied the broken warrior, remembering another conversation months ago when a consortium administrator had dismissed humanity with casual contempt. "We are what you created when you decided to erase us from existence. We are the sum total of every species you've eliminated, every civilization you've destroyed, every innovation you've suppressed in the name of stability. The galaxy will never accept you," the War Marshal said. "You've become monsters." "Good," Kalen replied. "Monsters are what this galaxy understands." The human fleet departed Thracarian Major, leaving behind a broken war machine and the ashes of military might. Throughout consortium space, the message was spreading: humanity had returned, and they brought with them the collected rage of 43 extinct civilizations. Phase 3 was complete. The galaxy's capacity for organized resistance was broken. Now came the hunting phase. The once mighty consortium had fractured into 1,000 desperate fragments, each remaining species fleeing to hidden colonies and forgotten worlds as humanity's campaign of systematic extinction continued. Commander Kalen Voss stood in the observation deck of the Retribution's Edge, watching another world burn through the viewports, the former paradise of Elysian Haven, where the peaceful melodry had once created symphonies that could move mountains. Now their music had fallen silent forever. Status report, Kalen said as Strategic Coordinator Zephyr Thorne approached, her white hair now streaked with premature silver from the strain of coordinating galactic genocide. 38 species confirmed extinct, she reported, her voice carrying the flat tone that had become humanity's standard emotional register. 7 more located and marked for elimination. 3 species remain unaccounted for. 6 months of systematic extermination had transformed the galaxy into a hunting ground. What had once been a thriving community of interstellar civilizations was now a collection of empty worlds and drifting debris fields. Humanity had become efficient at extinction, perhaps too efficient. The last 3? Kalen asked. The Whisper Collective has gone into deep hibernation somewhere in the galactic core, Zephyr replied, consulting her tactical pad. The Void Dancers have retreated to their pocket dimension. And the Eternal Architects? She paused. They've barricaded themselves in the Nexus station at the galaxy's edge. Intelligence Chief Lyra Nightfall materialized beside them, her expression carrying news that would change everything. Sir, we've received a priority transmission from the Nexus station. The Eternal Architects want to negotiate. The Eternal Architects were the galaxy's oldest species, ancient beings who had watched civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. They had been the true architects of the consortium, the hidden power behind every decision, every erasure, every act of systematic genocide that had been disguised as administrative necessity. Put them through, Kalen ordered. The main display activated, revealing a being that seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime. The Eternal Architect's form shifted constantly, sometimes appearing as pure energy, sometimes as abstract geometric patterns, sometimes as something that human minds could barely comprehend. Commander Voss, it said, its voice resonating across dimensions. We wish to discuss terms. There are no terms, Kalen replied. You coordinated the extinction of 43 species, including my own. You turned genocide into an art form, disguised as galactic stability. Every dead world, every erased civilization, every murdered child bears your signature. You misunderstand our purpose, the architect protested, its form flickering with what might have been distress. We maintained balance. We prevented chaos. The galaxy without our guidance will descend into. Will descend into what? Kalen interrupted. Freedom? Justice? The possibility that younger species might find better solutions than systematic murder? The architect's form stabilized into something resembling disappointment. You have become that which you sought to destroy. In your quest for vengeance, you have eliminated more civilizations in 6 months than we removed in 1,000,000 years. The accusation hit like a physical blow, not because it was wrong, but because it was true. Humanity had indeed become efficient exterminators, perhaps surpassing even the Eternal Architects in their capacity for systematic genocide. The difference, Kalen said quietly, is that we're killing monsters. You murdered innocents. From our perspective, all younger species are potential threats, the architect replied. Just as you have proven. Your campaign validates every elimination we ever authorized. Director Sage Morwen, who had remained silent during most of the campaign, finally spoke. What are you offering? Restoration, the architect said simply. We can bring back Earth. All 23 billion humans, exactly as they were before the erasure. Your homeworld, your families, your civilization, return to normal spacetime as if the displacement never occurred. The offer hung in the space between them like a temptation beyond measure. Earth restored, humanity's lost billions returned to life, the possibility of reclaiming everything they had lost in their quest for vengeance. In exchange for what? Zephyr asked, though her voice suggested she already knew. Cease your campaign. Accept exile to the galactic rim. Allow us to rebuild the consortium with proper safeguards against species like humanity. Become a cautionary tale rather than an extinction event. Kalen closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 40 billion deaths, both the humans murdered by the consortium and the aliens eliminated by humanity's vengeance. The possibility of undoing it all, of returning to the days when humanity believed in peaceful coexistence, was almost overwhelming. Then he opened his eyes and saw the galaxy as it truly was, not a community of civilizations, but a carefully maintained ecosystem of predators and prey, with the eternal architects as the ultimate apex species deciding which civilizations deserve to exist. No, he said finally. Sir? Director Morwen asked, her voice carrying desperate hope. Our families. Earth, 23 billion people. Will remain dead, Kalen replied, his voice carrying the weight of absolute finality. Because the galaxy that murdered them still exists. Because the eternal architects who coordinated 43 genocides still draw breath. Because somewhere in the darkness, another young species is being evaluated for elimination. The architect's form flickered with something approaching respect. You choose universal extinction over personal salvation. How remarkably human. We choose to ensure that no other species ever faces what we faced, Kalen corrected. That no other children wake up to discover their homeworld has been erased from existence. That no other civilization has to choose between submission and extermination. Then you doom the galaxy to chaos. We free the galaxy from tyranny. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Through the viewports, the remains of Elysian Haven continued to burn, its surface scarred by weapons that existed beyond conventional physics. All ships, Kalen ordered, his voice carrying to the fleet. Set course for the Nexus station. It's time to finish what they started. Fleet Commander Orion Darkthorn looked up from his station. Sir, even with our advanced weapons, the Nexus station is a Dyson sphere surrounding an artificial star. The eternal architects have had millions of years to fortify it. Then we'll have to be creative, Kalen replied, studying the tactical displays that showed humanity's ultimate target. After all, we learned from the best teachers, 43 extinct civilizations who tried to resist the galaxy's natural order. As the human fleet jumped toward the galactic edge, they carried with them the accumulated knowledge and weaponry of every species the consortium had ever eliminated. The final battle would not be between humanity and the eternal architects, but between extinction and existence itself. The galaxy would either be free, or it would be empty. There would be no middle ground. Part 8, The Empty Throne. The Nexus station dominated the galaxy's edge like a monument to cosmic hubris, a sphere of dark metal surrounding an artificial star, its surface crawling with technologies that predated most civilizations. Within its core dwelt the eternal architects, the ancient beings who had shaped galactic history through calculated genocide for millions of years. Commander Kalen Voss stood on the bridge of the Retribution's edge, staring at the station that represented everything humanity had learned to hate about the universe. Around him, the last fleet of mankind prepared for a final battle that would determine whether the galaxy would be ruled by fear or freed from tyranny entirely. Station defenses are beyond anything we've encountered, reported Fleet Commander Orion Darkthorn, his young face aged by months of systematic extermination. Reality distortion fields, temporal barriers, weapons that shouldn't be possible even by architect standards. Strategic Coordinator Zephyr Thorn worked at her console, her white hair now completely silver from the strain of coordinating galactic genocide. They've had millions of years to prepare for this moment. Every species that ever threatened them has been studied, analyzed, and their weapons incorporated into the station's defenses. How many of them are left? Asked Director Sage Morwen, the only member of the command crew who still carried visible weight from their choices. "Impossible to determine," replied Intelligence Chief Lyra Nightfall. "The eternal architects exist partially outside normal time. There could be dozens or thousands, or the same few beings experiencing this moment from multiple temporal perspectives." Through the viewports, the Nexus station began to pulse with energies that hurt to observe directly. Spacetime itself seemed to bend around the structure as its ancient inhabitants prepared to defend the throne from which they had orchestrated 43 genocides. "Incoming transmission," announced Communications Officer Echo Void Caller. The main display activated, showing not one but dozens of eternal architects, their forms shifting between dimensions as they spoke in perfect unison. Their collective voice carried the weight of geological ages. "Humanity. You have impressed us with your thoroughness. In 6 months, you have eliminated more civilizations than we removed in 1,000,000 years. You have proven that our methods were restrained, perhaps even merciful by comparison." Kalen stepped forward, feeling the collective gaze of beings older than his species' entire evolutionary history. "You want us to become you. To take over the role of galactic exterminators, maintaining stability through systematic murder. The galaxy requires guidance," the architects replied. "Young species inevitably develop technologies that threaten cosmic stability. Someone must make the hard choices, perform the necessary cullings, maintain the balance between order and chaos. By erasing entire civilizations. By preventing universal extinction. Without careful management, aggressive species inevitably trigger galactic wars that sterilize all life. We have prevented such catastrophes for millions of years." Zephyr looked up from her tactical station. "They're right about one thing: without the consortium structure, the galaxy will probably tear itself apart within a few centuries. Most species only cooperated because they feared the hegemony's enforcement. So we let them continue?" Director Morwen asked, her voice carrying desperate hope. "Accept their offer, take our people back, and allow the system to persist?" "No," Kalen said quietly. "Because the system is built on a fundamental lie, that some beings have the right to judge which others deserve to exist." The architect's collective form flickered with what might have been amusement. "And yet you have spent months making exactly such judgments. How many innocents died when you eliminated 43 species? How many children who had never heard of humanity perished for their elders' crimes?" The accusation hung in the air like a weapon, because it was true. Humanity's campaign of vengeance had indeed killed billions of innocents, farmers and artists, scientists and dreamers who had played no role in the consortium's genocidal policies. In becoming the galaxy's exterminators, they had become the very monsters they sought to destroy. "The difference," Kalen said finally, "is that we're ending the cycle. No more consortium, no more systematic erasures, no more species reduced to administrative footnotes. You're ending everything," the architects corrected. "Without guidance, the galaxy will destroy itself within centuries. You offer not freedom but delayed extinction." "Then that's the choice we make," Kalen replied. "Better a galaxy that destroys itself through its own decisions than one that lives under the boot of immortal tyrants." The Nexus station's defenses activated, reality itself becoming unreliable as temporal barriers and dimension-shifting weapons targeted the human fleet. But humanity had learned from 43 extinct civilizations, incorporating their technologies and innovations into weapons that defied conventional physics. The battle that followed was not fought in normal spacetime but across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Human ships phased through reality barriers while weapons designed by extinct philosophers struck at the conceptual foundations of the Nexus station. Technologies preserved from murdered civilizations found their final purpose in bringing down their killers. "Hull breaches on 17 ships," reported Damage Control. "But the station's outer defenses are failing. The architect's weapons can't adapt fast enough to counter 43 different extinct technologies simultaneously." Through the chaos of impossible physics, Kalen watched his fleet tear apart the Nexus station piece by piece. Each explosion represented not just destruction but liberation, the end of a system that had treated genocide as administrative necessity. Final transmission from the architects, Echo announced. The display showed the ancient beings' collective form, now flickering and unstable as their citadel crumbled around them. Their voice carried the weight of dying epochs. You have doomed the galaxy to chaos and eventual extinction. Every species that dies in the wars to come will be your responsibility. Every world that burns will bear humanity's name. Good, Kalen replied. Let them know that when the universe ends, it won't be because someone decided they deserved to die. It will be because they chose their own fate, for better or worse. The Nexus station collapsed into its artificial star, taking with it the last remnants of the civilization that had shaped galactic history through calculated murder. The explosion visible from thousands of light-years away, a signal to every surviving species that the age of imposed order had ended. In the aftermath, as humanity's battered fleet regrouped among the debris, Director Morwen approached Kalen's command chair. What do we do now? We've eliminated the consortium, but we've also eliminated ourselves. 47 ships can't rebuild a galaxy. Kalen stared out at the empty space where the Nexus station had stood, feeling the weight of unimaginable choices. We don't rebuild it. We let the galaxy find its own way, make its own mistakes, chart its own course. Maybe they'll destroy themselves. Maybe they'll find something better than what the architects built. And humanity? Dies free, Kalen said simply. We'll never see Earth again. Our families will remain dead. Our species will probably be extinct within a generation. But no other civilization will ever face what we faced, the choice between submission and extermination. As the fleet prepared for its final jump into unknown space, Communications Officer Echo announced one last transmission, not from the destroyed architects, but from a source much closer to home. Sir, I'm receiving a signal from Sol System. It's faint, but the quantum signature matches Earth's old communication arrays. The bridge fell silent as the impossible transmission clarified. Through static and dimensional interference came a voice that no one had heard for 8 months, the automated distress beacon of Earth's orbital traffic control, still broadcasting from wherever the crystalline collective had displaced humanity's homeworld. This is Earth control to any human vessels, the recording said. We are alive but displaced. Repeat, Earth and all Sol System colonies are intact but located outside normal spacetime. If anyone receives this transmission, please respond. We're waiting to come home. Tears ran down faces that had forgotten how to cry as the last survivors of humanity heard the voices of the dead. 23 billion people still lived, still waited, still hoped for rescue that would never come. Their children were growing up in dimensional exile while their guardians fought a war of extermination in their name. We could search for them, Director Morwen whispered. Spend our remaining years trying to find the dimensional coordinates, bring them back. No, Kalen said, his voice breaking for the first time since Earth's disappearance. We've become what we fought against. We're exterminators now, killers who eliminated 43 species in the name of justice. They deserve better than us. The transmission continued, carrying messages from children asking when they could go home, from scientists requesting updates on colony expansions, from ordinary people living ordinary lives in a pocket dimension while their protectors had become the galaxy's greatest monsters. Let them remain pure, Kalen continued, watching his crew struggle with the weight of choices that had seemed necessary but now felt like damnation. Let them remember humanity as it was, not as what we became. The fleet jumped into hyperspace for the last time, carrying 47 ships and 15,000 souls toward the galactic rim where they would live out their remaining years in exile. Behind them, the galaxy began the painful process of rebuilding without overlords, without imposed stability, without the comfort of knowing that someone else would make the hard choices. In the dimensional pocket where Earth waited, children continued to play while their parents scanned the skies for ships that would never come. They remained innocent of the price paid for their survival, unaware that their protectors had chosen the galaxy's freedom over their own redemption. The maps no longer showed Earth, and they never would again. But in the space between dimensions, humanity's better angels still lived, a reminder of what the species had been before they learned that mercy was weakness and trust was fatal. The galaxy was free. Humanity was extinct in all the ways that mattered. And somewhere in the dark between stars, the last guardians of a dead species flew toward whatever end awaited them, carrying with them the weight of 43 extinct civilizations and the knowledge that sometimes, justice and damnation were the same thing. The universe would never be safe again. That was the gift humanity left behind.